The watchers of Blue Ridge Parkway, they were counting me. If you ever find yourself driving along the Blue Ridge Parkway after midnight, and you see someone standing alone beside the road, do not stop. It doesn't matter if they look lost. It doesn't matter if they're waving. And it definitely doesn't matter if there are children among them. Keep driving. Because the first thing you need to understand about the people who stand along that road is this. They are not waiting for a ride. They are waiting for you to look back. And once you do, they know you can see them. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is a place where we explore dark legends, unexplained encounters, disturbing disappearances, and horror stories hidden in some of the most beautiful places in America. Tonight, we're heading into the mountains of North Carolina, along one of the most scenic roads in the United States. The Blue Ridge Parkway. A road famous for its breathtaking overlooks, endless forests, winding mountain curves, and peaceful stretches where you can drive for miles without seeing another human being. But there are places along the parkway where that peacefulness feels different. Where the silence seems too complete. Where the trees appear to close around the road. And where, according to one disturbing story, drivers sometimes see people standing along the shoulder. One person. Then two. Then 5. Then 10. And if the driver makes the mistake of checking the rearview mirror, the number is never the same. It is always larger. This is the story of a man named Daniel Mercer. And the night he discovered that some people standing beside the Blue Ridge Parkway weren't actually standing there at all. They were waiting for someone to notice them. Daniel had always preferred driving at night. There was something about empty roads that made him feel calmer. During the day, roads belong to everyone. Tourists, families, trucks, motorcycles, campers. People pulling over every few miles to photograph mountains they had already seen 100 times online. At night, however, the road became something else. It belonged to whoever was brave enough to stay on it. Daniel was 34 years old and had spent most of his life in western North Carolina. He knew the mountains. Not like a park ranger knew them, with maps and trail numbers and geological names. He knew them the way people know the neighborhood where they grew up. He knew which roads became dangerous after rain, which curves had no guardrails, which overlooks were usually empty, which stretches of forest became completely dark once the sun went down. And he knew the Blue Ridge Parkway. Or at least, he thought he did. That was the problem. Daniel's job required him to travel frequently between small towns in North Carolina and Virginia. On the night everything began, he had been working late. It was October. The kind of October when the mountains were already cold after sunset. The leaves had begun changing color, turning the forests into enormous walls of orange, red, and gold during the day. But at night, all of that beauty disappeared. The mountains became black silhouettes. Daniel left a small town near Asheville shortly after 11 p.m. He could have taken the interstate. That would have been faster, safer, more predictable. But Daniel hated the interstate at night. Too many headlights. Too many trucks. Too much noise. So when his navigation system suggested a route that would take him along a section of the Blue Ridge Parkway, he accepted it without hesitation. He didn't know that this decision would later become the one moment of his life he wished he could undo. At 11:47 p.m., Daniel turned onto the parkway. His headlights swept across the trees. The road curved gently into the darkness. For several minutes, everything was normal. The radio played quietly. Daniel rested one hand on the steering wheel while the other held a cup of gas station coffee. He wasn't tired. He wasn't frightened. He wasn't thinking about ghosts. He was thinking about getting home. The first strange thing happened 12 minutes later. Daniel saw a man standing beside the road. At first, he barely noticed him. The figure was on the right shoulder, partially hidden among the trees. Daniel's headlights caught him for only a second. A man. Tall. Thin. Wearing something dark. Daniel assumed he was a hiker. Maybe someone whose vehicle had broken down. But as Daniel drove past, something bothered him. The man wasn't holding a flashlight. He wasn't looking at the road. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't trying to flag Daniel down. He was simply standing there. Completely still. Daniel watched him disappear in the side mirror. Then he forgot about him. At least, he tried to. 5 minutes later, Daniel saw another person. This time, it was a woman. She stood on the left side of the road. Daniel slowed slightly. The woman was wearing a pale coat. Her hair hung straight down around her face. She wasn't moving. Daniel's first thought was that she might have been injured. His second thought was that it was strange for someone to be walking along the parkway alone at midnight. He glanced at his dashboard. 11:52 p.m. The woman remained in his headlights for perhaps 2 seconds. Then Daniel passed her. He looked in the mirror. She was gone. Daniel frowned. He checked again. Nothing. Only black road. Trees. Darkness. He laughed quietly. Okay, he muttered. Maybe she'd stepped into the trees. Maybe he'd simply lost sight of her. He turned the radio up. And kept driving. The third person appeared around 10 minutes later. This time, Daniel stopped. Not completely. He slowed to about 20 miles per hour. His headlights revealed a young man standing beside the road. The man looked different from the first two. He appeared to be in his 20s. Jeans. Dark jacket. Short hair. His hands hung at his sides. Daniel rolled down his window slightly. Hey! The man didn't react. Daniel slowed further. Are you okay? Nothing. The man stared straight ahead. Not at Daniel. Not at the road. Not into the woods. Just straight ahead. Daniel felt a strange chill move across his shoulders. He rolled the window back up. Something inside him said, "Keep going." So he did. He accelerated. The young man disappeared behind him. Daniel watched the road ahead. Then, almost without thinking, he checked the rearview mirror. The young man was standing behind his vehicle. Daniel's foot immediately lifted from the accelerator. He stared. The man was far behind now. Maybe 50 yards. Maybe 70. Daniel couldn't tell. But he was standing in the exact same position. Completely motionless. Daniel blinked. The road curved. The figure disappeared. Daniel looked forward again. His heart had begun beating faster. He tried to explain it. Maybe the man had been walking. Maybe Daniel had misjudged the distance. Maybe his headlights had created some optical illusion. He turned off the radio. Now the only sounds inside the car were the engine, tires, and occasional wind moving through the trees. Daniel drove another mile. Then another. He began to relax. The strange encounter was already becoming a story he would probably laugh about tomorrow. Then he saw them. 3 people. Standing together. On the right side of the road. Daniel's stomach tightened. They were positioned several feet apart. An older man. A woman. And what looked like a child. All 3 were facing the road. None of them moved. Daniel slowed again. Something felt wrong. The older man wore a dark hat. The woman wore a long coat. The child was small. Maybe 8 years old. The child appeared to be wearing a light-colored sweater. Daniel stared at them as he approached. No car. No backpack. No flashlight. No phone. Nothing. Just 3 people standing beside an empty mountain road in the middle of the night. Daniel passed them. And then he made the mistake. He looked in the rearview mirror. The 3 people were still there. But there was something else. The first man. The first man Daniel had seen almost 30 minutes earlier. He was standing farther back. Daniel's hands tightened around the steering wheel. He looked again. There were 4. He blinked. 5. No. Daniel's breathing became shallow. There were now 5 people standing beside the road behind him. He looked away. Then looked again. 6. Daniel slammed his eyes forward. Don't. He said it out loud. Don't look. He didn't know why. He didn't know what he was afraid of. But every instinct in his body told him to stop looking. So he kept his eyes on the road. The parkway curved through the forest. Left. Right. Left again. Daniel drove faster. 45 miles per hour. Then 50. His headlights illuminated nothing but asphalt and trees. He kept expecting a deer to jump into the road. He kept expecting a fallen branch. Anything. Anything normal. But the road remained empty. And the silence seemed to grow heavier. Then his phone rang. Daniel nearly jumped out of his seat. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He ignored it. The phone stopped. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Unknown number. Daniel stared at it. He didn't answer. The call stopped. Then a text appeared. Daniel's stomach turned. He shouldn't have looked. But he did. The message contained only 4 words. Why did you count US? Daniel's entire body went cold. He pulled the car onto the shoulder. The tires crushed gravel. The engine continued running. Daniel stared at the phone. He reread the message. Then again. There was no name. No number he recognized. Just an unknown caller. And 4 words. Why did you count US? Daniel slowly looked up. The forest surrounded him. Black. Silent. His headlights illuminated the road ahead. Nothing moved. He looked into the side mirror. Nothing. He checked the rearview mirror. The road behind him was empty. Daniel exhaled. He picked up his phone. His thumb hovered over the message. Then he typed, "Who is this?" He stared at the screen. He didn't send it. Something stopped him. A thought. A simple, horrible thought. If someone had seen him counting, that meant someone had been watching him. Daniel deleted the message. He put the phone down. Then he drove. He didn't stop again. For the next 15 minutes, there were no people. Daniel began convincing himself the entire thing had been a hallucination caused by exhaustion. He hadn't slept properly in 2 days. Maybe he'd seen hikers. Maybe the strange figures were people camping nearby. Maybe the text was a prank. Maybe someone had somehow seen his reaction through the darkness. There were explanations. There had to be. Then Daniel reached an overlook. He recognized it. Or at least he thought he did. A large pull-off appeared on the right. Daniel knew the location. He had stopped there years ago during the daytime. There was a stone wall overlooking the mountains. During daylight, it offered an incredible view. At night, however, there was nothing to see. Only darkness. Daniel drove past. Then he noticed something. A person was standing beside the stone wall. Daniel's chest tightened. He continued driving. Another person. Then another. Then another. Daniel's foot instinctively moved toward the brake. There were people standing along the overlook. Dozens. No. That wasn't possible. Daniel drove past slowly. The figures were scattered across the overlook. Some stood near the stone wall. Others stood beside the trees. Some were closer to the road. They all faced the same direction. Toward him. Daniel's heart began pounding. He didn't stop. He couldn't. He kept driving. And then, in the rearview mirror, he saw them. Every single figure had turned. They were watching his car leave. Daniel's hands began shaking. He looked away. He stared at the road ahead. Don't look. Don't look. Don't look. Then something moved across the road. Daniel slammed on the brakes. The car stopped violently. His seatbelt cut into his chest. The headlights illuminated the road. Empty. Daniel stared. Nothing. His breathing sounded enormous inside the vehicle. He waited. 5 seconds. 10. 20. Nothing. Then he heard something. A sound outside. Knock. Daniel froze. Knock. It came from behind him. He turned his head slowly. Another knock. This time against the rear passenger window. Daniel didn't move. His eyes remained fixed on the darkness. Knock. 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 Someone was standing outside the car. Daniel could see the faint outline of a person through the rear window. His heart nearly stopped. The figure stood directly behind the vehicle. Daniel couldn't see the face. Only a silhouette. He reached for the door lock. It was already locked. The figure lifted one hand. And placed it against the glass. Daniel stared. The hand was pale. Too pale. The fingers were long. Unnaturally long. Daniel stopped breathing. The person slowly moved closer to the window. And then Daniel saw the face. It was the young man. The third person he'd seen. The man standing beside the road. Daniel stared at him. The man stared back. His eyes were open. Wide. Unblinking. His lips moved. Daniel couldn't hear him. The man mouthed something. Daniel leaned closer. And finally understood. The man was saying, "Don't count." Daniel's blood turned cold. Then the man smiled. Daniel slammed the car into drive. The tires screamed. He accelerated away from the overlook. He didn't care about the speed. He didn't care about the curves. He didn't care about anything. He only wanted distance. The forest blurred past his windows. Daniel looked at the speedometer. 60. 70. Too fast. He slowed slightly. The road curved sharply. His headlights swept across the trees. And there they were. Standing beside the road. People. Daniel's heart dropped. He passed one. Then another. Then another. They were everywhere now. On both sides. Some stood close to the asphalt. Some were deep in the trees. Some were partially hidden behind trunks. Some appeared to be wearing modern clothes. Others looked like they belonged to another time. Daniel saw a woman in a long white dress. An old man in suspenders. A teenager wearing a faded jacket. A child holding something in his hands. A woman with a scarf covering her head. A man in a military uniform. All of them standing perfectly still. All of them facing the road. Daniel didn't look in the mirror. He refused. He stared forward. Then his phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. Ignored. Again. 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 The screen kept lighting up. Unknown number. Unknown number. Unknown number. Daniel finally grabbed the phone and turned it off. The screen went black. Silence. For about 30 seconds. Then the phone turned itself back on. Daniel stared. He hadn't touched it. The screen lit up. One new message. He didn't want to read it. He knew he shouldn't. But his eyes moved anyway. The message said, "You missed 3. Daniel's mouth went dry. He looked at the road. Then at the mirror. No. He couldn't. He kept driving. Another message appeared. 4. Daniel's breathing became uneven. Another. 5. Then 6. Daniel slammed the phone onto the passenger seat. "Stop," he whispered. The phone vibrated. He didn't touch it. Vibrate. 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 Then silence. Daniel drove. The road continued through the mountains. But something had changed. He had been driving for almost an hour. He knew the route. He knew where he should be. He knew which direction he was traveling. But the road signs were wrong. Daniel passed a sign indicating a location he'd never heard of. Then another. He slowed down. His GPS showed nothing. The blue navigation line had disappeared. The map displayed a blank gray area. Daniel stared at the screen. No. He tapped it. Nothing. He restarted the navigation. Nothing. No signal. No route. No location. Daniel pulled over. He stared at the darkness. Something was wrong with the road. He grabbed his phone. No service. He tried emergency calling. Nothing. He turned on the interior light. For the first time that night, Daniel noticed something on his windshield. A reflection. At first, he thought it was dirt. Then he realized it was a handprint. On the inside of the glass. Daniel froze. There was a handprint on the inside of his windshield. He stared at it. 5 long fingers. A palm. Clear. Fresh. Daniel slowly looked around the car. No one was inside. The doors were still locked. Windows closed. He reached toward the handprint. Then stopped. He noticed something else. There were more. One on the driver's side window. One on the passenger window. 2 on the rear windows. Daniel looked toward the back. His blood ran cold. There were fingerprints on the glass. From the inside. Someone had touched the windows. From inside the vehicle. Daniel sat completely still. Then he heard a whisper. Very faint. From the back seat. 1. Daniel's eyes widened. He slowly looked into the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. 2. Daniel's breathing stopped. The voice came again. Closer. 3. Daniel's hand moved toward the door. 4. His fingers trembled. 5. Daniel looked into the mirror again. For half a second? He saw a face. A pale face. Sitting in the back seat. Daniel screamed. He spun around. Nothing. The seat was empty. He looked again. Nothing. His heart hammered against his ribs. Then he heard another voice. This one came from the passenger seat. 6. Daniel slowly turned. The passenger seat was empty. But the seatbelt was fastened. Daniel stared. The belt was pulled tightly across the empty seat. And something was sitting there. Not visible. But there. The seat cushion was compressed. Daniel couldn't move. The buckle clicked. Then released. The seatbelt slowly returned to its holder. Daniel stared at it. He wanted to leave the car. Every part of his body screamed at him to run. But outside the car were the people. And inside the car? Something was counting. Daniel started the engine. The vehicle roared. He shifted into drive. He didn't care where the road led. He just needed to move. The car rolled forward. Daniel kept his eyes ahead. The road was empty. For several seconds. Then he saw something in the distance. A person. Standing in the middle of the road. Daniel slowed. The figure didn't move. He switched to high beams. The light revealed a woman. She stood barefoot on the asphalt. Her clothing was soaked. Her hair covered most of her face. Daniel stopped several feet away. The woman slowly raised her head. Daniel's stomach twisted. He recognized her. He didn't know how. But he recognized her. She was the woman from the overlook. The one in the pale coat. The second person he'd seen. She lifted one hand. Not waving. Pointing. Daniel looked where she was pointing. Toward the trees. Nothing. He looked back at her. She was closer. Daniel hadn't seen her move. He stepped on the accelerator. The woman disappeared beneath the headlights. Daniel drove forward. Then he looked in the rearview mirror. She was standing behind him. Not on the road. On the roof of his car. Daniel screamed. The woman crouched on top of the vehicle. Her face was pressed against the rear windshield. Her mouth opened. Too wide. Daniel swerved. The car nearly left the road. He corrected. When he looked again, she was gone. Daniel was crying now. He didn't even realize it. He wiped his face with one hand. Just get home. He said it again. Just get home. Then he saw a sign. A real sign. Civilization. A road junction. Daniel almost laughed with relief. He slowed. The sign showed a familiar direction. Asheville. Daniel stared. That made no sense. He had been traveling away from Asheville. But the sign told him Asheville was ahead. He followed it. The road became narrower. The trees became thicker. No streetlights. No buildings. No houses. Nothing. Daniel's headlights illuminated the pavement. Then he saw another sign. This one was old. Rusty. Almost completely covered by vines. Daniel couldn't read it at first. He drove closer. Then the headlights caught the letters. Blue Ridge Parkway. Daniel stared. He looked at the road ahead. Then at the sign. His stomach dropped. He had never left the parkway. The road had brought him back. He checked the time. 12:41 a.m. Almost an hour had passed since he first entered. Daniel looked at the odometer. He had driven more than 40 miles. Yet the map showed he was almost exactly where he had started. He pulled over. This time, he didn't turn off the engine. He grabbed his phone. Still no signal. Then something appeared on the screen. A notification. Daniel frowned. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a call. It was a photo. A photo had appeared in his gallery. Daniel opened it. His stomach dropped. The picture showed his car. Taken from behind. It was driving along the parkway. Daniel stared at the image. Then he zoomed in. The photo had been taken from inside the forest. Someone had been standing among the trees. Watching him. Daniel zoomed closer. And saw himself. His own face was visible through the windshield. He was driving. The photograph had been taken only minutes earlier. Daniel looked around. Nothing. He checked the metadata. 12:39 a.m. 2 minutes ago. Daniel's fingers began shaking. Then he noticed something behind the car. In the photograph. People. Standing along the road. He zoomed in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Daniel counted them. Then he stopped. Because there was another figure. Closer to the camera. Standing just behind the car. Daniel zoomed further. The figure was a man. He wore a dark jacket. Short hair. Thin face. Daniel recognized him. It was the first man. The one he had seen near the road. The man wasn't looking at Daniel's car. He was looking directly at the person taking the photograph. Daniel stared at the image. Then his phone vibrated. A new message. No number. No name. Just text. You counted wrong. Daniel dropped the phone. The screen remained lit on the passenger seat. Another message appeared. There are 7. Daniel looked into the rearview mirror. He didn't want to, but he did. There was no one behind him. The road was empty. Daniel stared. Nothing. Then he looked at the phone. Another message. Now there are 8. Daniel's breathing stopped. He slowly turned toward the back window. Nothing. Another message. 9. Daniel looked at the side mirror. Nothing. Another. 10. Daniel turned the interior light on. The back seat was empty. He looked at the windshield. Empty. Passenger seat. Empty. Driver's side. Empty. Then something moved behind the car. Daniel looked through the rear windshield. A person stood on the road. Then another appeared beside them. Then another. Then another. Daniel watched. His body went completely rigid. They were walking out of the darkness. One by one. Slowly. Silently. People began emerging from the trees. Not running. Not chasing. Just walking. They moved toward the road. And each one stopped at the shoulder. Daniel counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then 11. Daniel backed away from the window. There were 11. He hadn't seen them arrive. He hadn't heard footsteps. They were simply there. Then something happened that made Daniel's blood turn to ice. Every person turned their head toward his car. At exactly the same time. Daniel couldn't breathe. They were too far away to see their faces clearly. But he knew they were looking at him. All of them. Then the phone vibrated. Daniel looked down. One final message appeared. Look again. Daniel stared at the words. No. He whispered. The figures outside remained motionless. Daniel gripped the steering wheel. He wanted to drive. But something stopped him. A strange feeling. A certainty. If he moved now, something would happen. He didn't know what. But he knew. The people were waiting. Waiting for him to do something. Waiting for him to look. Waiting for him to count. Daniel closed his eyes. He took a slow breath. Then he heard a knock. Not on the window. On the roof. Knock. Daniel opened his eyes. Another knock. Knock. Then another. Knock. 3 knocks. Daniel stared at the windshield. The figures outside were still standing. But there was something new. A shadow was moving across the roof. Daniel watched the shadow pass over the windshield. Something was crawling above him. Slowly. Very slowly. The phone vibrated. Daniel looked down. The screen displayed another message. This time, there were only 3 words. Don't look up. Daniel froze. His eyes remained on the windshield. Above him, something scratched the roof. Slowly. Metal against something hard. Serrrrrrrrrrrch. Daniel's hands trembled. The sound moved from the roof toward the driver's side. Serrrrrrrrrrch. Then stopped directly above his head. Daniel stared forward. He could hear his own heartbeat. The people outside had begun moving. Daniel noticed them through the windshield. One by one, they were stepping closer to the road. Not toward the car. Just closer. As if they wanted a better view. Daniel's phone vibrated again. He looked down. A new message appeared. They can't come inside. Daniel stared. For the first time that night, he felt a small amount of relief. Then another message arrived. Unless you invite them. Daniel stopped breathing. He looked at the door locks. Locked. Windows closed. He hadn't invited anyone. He hadn't opened anything. He hadn't even spoken to them. Then another message appeared. You already did. Daniel slowly remembered the first person. The man standing by the road. He remembered slowing down. He remembered asking, "Are you okay?" Daniel's blood went cold. He had spoken to him. Maybe that was enough. Another message. You spoke to the first one. Daniel's eyes widened. Another. You looked at the second. Another. You counted the third. Daniel stared at the screen. Then the final message appeared. And now they know your name. Daniel's phone suddenly rang. The caller ID wasn't unknown anymore. There was a name. Daniel stared at it. His own name was displayed on the screen. Daniel Mercer. Daniel's blood froze. His phone continued ringing. He didn't answer. The figures outside began walking toward the car. Daniel watched them. Slowly. One step at a time. They were approaching. The ringing continued. Daniel's own name remained on the screen. Then the call stopped. Silence. Daniel exhaled. The figures outside stopped. He waited. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. Then his phone rang again. But this time, the sound didn't come from the phone. It came from outside. Daniel's head turned toward the driver's window. His phone wasn't ringing. The sound was coming from the forest. A ringtone. The exact ringtone of Daniel's phone. It echoed between the trees. Daniel stared into the darkness. Then another phone began ringing. From somewhere deeper in the forest. Then another. Then another. Soon the entire forest was filled with ringing phones. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Different ringtones. Different melodies. Different notification sounds. Daniel stared in horror. Then, through the windshield, he noticed something. The people standing beside the road had begun pulling phones from their pockets. One by one. They all held them up. Every screen illuminated their faces. Daniel couldn't see the screens clearly. But he could see the light. Then every phone stopped ringing. At the exact same moment. The silence that followed was worse. Daniel's phone lit up. One message. Count again. Daniel shook his head. No. The message disappeared. Another appeared. Count again. No. Another. Count again. Daniel closed his eyes. He refused. Then someone whispered directly beside his ear. 11. Daniel's eyes flew open. He turned. No one. The passenger seat was empty. But the seat belt was fastened again. Daniel stared at it. The buckle was locked. Someone was sitting there. Invisible. Daniel could feel the weight. Then the voice whispered again. 11 outside. Daniel couldn't move. A third whisper came from behind him. 1 inside. Daniel's eyes slowly moved toward the rearview mirror. The back seat looked empty. But there was a shape in the darkness. A human-shaped depression in the seat. Something was sitting there. Daniel stared. Then the invisible thing in the passenger seat whispered. 2 inside. Daniel's mouth opened. No sound came out. The rearview mirror trembled slightly. And the shape in the back seat leaned forward. Daniel could see the outline of a head. A shoulder. An arm. Then a face began to emerge from the darkness. Daniel slammed his eyes shut. He screamed. The car's horn suddenly blared. Daniel's hands were nowhere near it. The headlights flickered. The engine revved. The doors locked themselves. Daniel grabbed the handle. It wouldn't open. He pulled again. Nothing. The passenger side lock clicked. Then the rear doors. Click. 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 All 4 doors were locked. Then something touched Daniel's shoulder. He felt fingers. Cold fingers. Daniel froze. The voice whispered. Don't turn around. Daniel stared forward. His eyes filled with tears. The fingers tightened. Don't turn around. Daniel didn't. Then the person outside the windshield began walking toward him. Daniel could see the figures approaching. One by one. The first man. The woman. The child. The old man. The others. They moved slowly. But they weren't looking at the car anymore. They were looking at something behind Daniel. All of them. Their faces had changed. Their expressions were no longer blank. They looked afraid. Daniel noticed this. And somehow, that frightened him more than anything else. The figures stopped. All of them stared over the roof of his car. Daniel heard the voice behind him whisper. They're afraid. Daniel's entire body went cold. The hand remained on his shoulder. Daniel finally understood something. The people outside weren't surrounding him. They weren't trying to get inside. They weren't hunting him. They were trying to stay away from whatever was inside the car with him. Daniel slowly looked toward the rearview mirror. The figure in the back seat was still there. Its face remained hidden. Daniel could only see its silhouette. Then it leaned closer. Its mouth appeared beside his ear. And whispered. Drive. Daniel stared forward. The people outside began backing away. Slowly. Every one of them. Daniel didn't understand. Then the voice whispered. Drive. The car shifted into gear by itself. Daniel's foot wasn't touching the pedal. The vehicle began moving. Slowly. The people outside scattered. Daniel's headlights swept across them. They were running now. Not toward the forest. Away from the car. Daniel's heart hammered. He tried to brake. Nothing. The car accelerated. 20 miles per hour. 30. 40. Daniel grabbed the steering wheel. The road curved sharply ahead. He fought the wheel. The vehicle responded. But not to him. It was driving itself. The thing behind him whispered. "Keep going." Daniel screamed. "Get out of my car." The voice went silent. For several seconds, Daniel heard nothing. Then something changed. The atmosphere inside the car became suddenly cold. The windows fogged. All of them. Daniel watched as condensation formed across the glass. And then something began writing on the windshield. Letters appeared slowly. As if an invisible finger were tracing them through the fog. D. A. N. I. E. L. Daniel stared. His name. Then another word appeared beneath it. Turn back. Daniel shook his head. The car continued forward. The road became darker. The trees seemed taller. The headlights barely penetrated the forest. Then Daniel saw something ahead. A line of people. Standing across the road. Dozens of them. Blocking the entire parkway. Daniel slammed on the brake. Nothing happened. The car continued. The people didn't move. Daniel screamed. The speedometer climbed. 50. 60. 70. The figures remained motionless. Daniel could see their faces now. Every one of them was looking directly at him. The vehicle continued toward them. Daniel grabbed the steering wheel with both hands. "Stop!" The invisible passenger whispered. "Don't." Daniel turned his head slightly. "Don't what?" The voice answered. "Don't stop." Daniel stared ahead. The people were only seconds away. Then Daniel noticed something. They weren't standing in the road. They were standing beside it. All of them. A huge line of people stretching into the darkness. One after another. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Daniel's headlights revealed only a fraction of them. The rest disappeared into the forest. He drove past. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 50. Daniel stopped counting. He couldn't. There were too many. Every few feet, another person. Every person standing still. Every person watching. And every time Daniel glanced at the rearview mirror, the line behind him seemed longer. He drove faster. The figures continued. Then he noticed something else. Some of them were familiar. Daniel saw the young man. Then the woman in the pale coat. The child. The old man. The first man. They were all there. But now they weren't standing separately. They were forming a line. And the line was following his car. Daniel's breathing became ragged. Then, far ahead, he saw headlights. Another vehicle. Finally. Another driver. Daniel felt relief. A car was coming toward him. Its headlights appeared around a curve. Daniel flashed his lights. Once. Twice. The approaching vehicle didn't slow. Daniel flashed again. The car came closer. It was an old pickup truck. Dark green. The driver was an older man. Daniel could see him through the windshield. Daniel waved desperately. The truck passed. For half a second, their eyes met. The old man looked terrified. Not of Daniel. Of something behind him. The truck continued away. Daniel checked his rearview mirror. The pickup truck had stopped. Daniel frowned. The truck was sitting in the middle of the road behind him. Its driver's side door opened. The old man stepped out. Daniel slowed. The old man raised both hands. Not waving. Warning him. Daniel rolled down the window. "What's wrong?" The old man screamed from a distance. "Do not look behind you." Daniel froze. The old man shouted again. "Keep your eyes on the road." Daniel stared at him. "Why?" The old man's face twisted with terror. "How many did you see?" Daniel couldn't answer. The old man stepped backward. His eyes moved toward the darkness behind Daniel. Then his expression changed. He looked confused. He whispered something. Daniel couldn't hear. "What?" The old man pointed. Not at the forest. At the road behind Daniel. Daniel's hands tightened around the wheel. The old man screamed. "There are too many." Daniel looked forward. Then back at the mirror. He couldn't stop himself. The rearview mirror showed the road, the trees, the darkness, and the old man's truck. But the old man wasn't alone anymore. There were people standing around his truck. 5, 10, 20. The old man was surrounded. Daniel watched in horror. The old man began backing away. The figures moved closer. Daniel could hear nothing through the closed windows. Then the old man looked directly at Daniel. His mouth moved. Daniel read the words. Go. Daniel stepped on the accelerator. The car surged forward. He drove away. Behind him, the old man's truck disappeared into the darkness. Daniel didn't look back again. He couldn't. He drove for another 10 minutes. Then 20. Then 30. The road finally began descending. The trees thinned. The darkness became less intense. Daniel saw lights ahead. Real lights. Streetlights. Buildings. A town. Civilization. His eyes filled with tears. He almost laughed. He had made it. He had escaped. Daniel drove toward the lights. A gas station appeared on the side of the road. Open. Bright. Normal. Daniel pulled in. He parked beside the pumps. The engine remained running. Daniel sat there. Hands shaking. Chest rising and falling. He looked around. Cars. A convenience store. A vending machine. A trash can. Everything was normal. He almost cried from relief. Daniel turned off the engine. For a moment, he simply sat. Then he looked into the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. Daniel exhaled. He laughed quietly. A broken, nervous laugh. It's over. He whispered. Then a voice answered from the back seat. No. Daniel's smile disappeared. He didn't move. The voice continued. You only made it out. Daniel's hand slowly tightened. The voice whispered. They're still counting. Daniel stared at the mirror. Nothing. Then his phone vibrated. He looked down. A new message. No number. No name. Just 3 words. 12 now. Daniel's heart stopped. He looked through the windshield. The gas station was empty. The cashier wasn't visible. The pumps were silent. No customers. No cars. Daniel slowly looked toward the entrance. The glass doors were open. Inside, the lights flickered. Then Daniel noticed something standing outside the store. A person. A woman. She was staring at his car. Daniel couldn't see her face clearly. He didn't need to. He knew her. The pale coat. The long hair. The same woman. Daniel's phone vibrated again. He looked down. Another message. 13. Daniel looked at the woman. She raised one hand and pointed toward the rear of his vehicle. Daniel's eyes slowly moved toward the mirror. He didn't want to look. He knew he shouldn't. But something made him. Daniel checked. The back seat was empty. Then he noticed the reflection in the rear window. There were people standing behind the car. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Daniel stopped breathing. He counted. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Daniel's hands began shaking. Then another figure stepped into view. 13. Daniel's phone vibrated. He looked down. The screen displayed one final message. You still haven't counted the one sitting next to you. Daniel slowly turned his eyes toward the passenger seat. The seat belt was fastened. The cushion was pressed down. Something was sitting there. Daniel could feel its presence. Then the invisible passenger turned its head toward him. Daniel heard a whisper directly beside his face. A voice he had heard before. The first voice. The voice from the beginning. And it said, "Now." A pause. Then, "Let's see if you can count them all." Daniel stared straight ahead. Outside the gas station, the woman in the pale coat began walking toward his car. Behind her, more people appeared. 1. Then 2. Then 5. Then 10. Then 20. Daniel's hand moved toward the ignition. But before he could start the car, the gas station lights suddenly went out. Everything became black. Daniel sat frozen. The only light came from his phone. And in the darkness, he heard footsteps. One pair. Then another. Then another. Footsteps approaching from every direction. Daniel locked the doors. He checked the windows. Locked. He checked the mirror. Nothing. Then he heard someone walking around the front of the car. Slowly. Step. 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 The footsteps stopped directly in front of the hood. Daniel stared through the windshield. The darkness was complete. Then two pale hands slowly appeared against the glass. Daniel recoiled. A face emerged between them. The face of the young man. The third watcher. He pressed his forehead against the windshield. His eyes were open. His mouth slowly formed a smile. Then he mouthed 4 words. Daniel could read them perfectly. "You forgot someone, Daniel." Daniel stared. The young man's face disappeared. The darkness returned. Daniel's phone vibrated. He looked down. A new message appeared. "Look in the mirror." Daniel shook his head. "No." Another message. "Look." He refused. The phone vibrated again. "Look." Daniel closed his eyes. The voice beside him whispered. "Daniel." He opened them. The passenger seat was still empty. But the invisible presence was closer now. So close that Daniel could feel cold air against his cheek. The voice whispered. "Look." Daniel slowly raised his eyes. The rearview mirror waited above him. He stared at it. At first, there was nothing. Then the mirror began filling with darkness. Not the darkness outside. Something else. A shape appeared. A face. Then another. Then another. Daniel's eyes widened. The mirror was full of faces. Dozens. Hundreds. People packed together behind his car. All staring into the vehicle. All staring at him. And then Daniel noticed something that made him stop breathing. They weren't behind his car. They were inside it. The faces were reflected in the mirror. But the back seat was empty. Daniel turned around. Nothing. He looked back at the mirror. The faces remained. Then one face moved closer. A little girl. She stared at Daniel. Her eyes were black. Her lips moved. Daniel leaned closer despite himself. The girl whispered. 14. Daniel's heart stopped. Another face appeared beside hers. 15. Another. 16. Another. 17. Daniel backed away. The numbers continued. 18. 19. 20. Daniel covered his ears. But the voices grew louder. 21. 22. 23. 24. Daniel screamed. "Stop!" Everything went silent. The faces disappeared. The gas station lights came back on. Daniel gasped. He looked around. The store was empty. The road outside was empty. No woman. No figures. No people. Nothing. Daniel stared at his phone. No messages. No strange calls. Nothing. For a moment, he thought it had ended. Then he noticed the gas station sign. Daniel stared. His blood went cold. The name of the gas station was unfamiliar. He looked at the road. The mountains were gone. The forest was gone. The road outside the gas station was completely different. Daniel slowly checked his phone. He finally had signal. He opened the map. The blue dot appeared. Daniel stared. The location was impossible. He wasn't in North Carolina anymore. He wasn't even near the Blue Ridge Parkway. His phone said he was somewhere deep in the mountains. But there was something else. A small notification appeared. Daniel opened it. It was a photograph. This time, he hadn't taken it. The photo showed the gas station. His car was parked beneath the lights. Daniel was sitting inside. And standing around the car were dozens of people. Every one of them was looking toward him. Daniel zoomed in. His face was visible through the windshield. He looked terrified. But that wasn't what frightened him. Daniel noticed something behind his car. A road sign. He zoomed in. The sign read, Blue Ridge Parkway, 1 mile. Daniel stared. His hands went cold. He looked outside. There was no road sign. No forest. No people. Nothing. He looked back at the photo. The people surrounding his car were still there. Daniel counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. He stopped. Something moved in the photo. One of the figures had turned its head. Daniel stared. The figure was looking directly at him. Then another turned. Then another. Then every person in the photograph looked toward the camera. Toward whoever had taken the picture. Daniel slowly realized something. The photograph wasn't showing him. It was showing someone else. Someone standing outside the car. Someone holding the camera. Someone watching him. Daniel's eyes moved to the bottom corner of the image. A shadow was visible. A human hand. Holding the phone. Daniel stared. Then he noticed the fingernails. Long. Pale. Dirty. The same hands he'd seen against the windshield. The same hands that had touched his shoulder. The phone vibrated. Daniel almost dropped it. A final message appeared. Daniel. He stared. Then another message. Don't worry. Another. We're almost home. Daniel's breathing stopped. Because he hadn't told them where he lived. He hadn't told anyone. The phone vibrated again. One final message appeared. We just need you to drive a little farther. Daniel looked through the windshield. The gas station was gone. The lights were gone. The store was gone. He was back on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And the road ahead was filled with people. Hundreds of them. Standing silently along both sides of the road. Watching. Waiting. Counting. Daniel looked at the rearview mirror. There were people behind him too. He looked at the passenger seat. The seatbelt was fastened. The cushion was depressed. Something was sitting beside him. Then the invisible passenger whispered. Daniel. He gripped the steering wheel. The voice continued. Whatever you do. A pause. Daniel's eyes remained on the road. Don't count the ones behind you. Daniel swallowed. Then the voice whispered something that made his blood run cold. Because they're not the ones you should be afraid of. Daniel looked ahead. At the end of the road, beyond the endless line of watchers, something enormous was standing between the trees. Daniel couldn't see its face. He couldn't see its body clearly. Only two pale lights in the darkness. Like eyes. The people beside the road suddenly stepped backward. Every single one of them. The thing in the forest moved closer. Daniel's engine began to shake. The invisible passenger beside him whispered. Drive. Daniel didn't move. Drive. Still nothing. Then every watcher beside the road turned toward Daniel. And for the first time, they all spoke together. Their voices came through the darkness like one enormous whisper. Keep driving. Daniel put his hands tighter around the wheel. The road ahead disappeared into the mountains. The thing between the trees took another step forward. And Daniel realized something. The watchers weren't trying to stop him. They were trying to make sure he didn't stop. Because whatever was waiting farther down the Blue Ridge Parkway was something even they were afraid of. Daniel pressed the accelerator. The car began moving. And somewhere behind him, inside the darkness of the back seat, something smiled. Then Daniel heard the sound of dozens of people walking behind his car. Not running. Not chasing. Walking. Following. And counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The voices continued. But this time, the counting wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside Daniel's car. And when the voice reached 25, Daniel heard a second voice whisper directly into his ear. Now count the people in front of you. Daniel looked ahead. His headlights illuminated the road. One watcher stood there. Then another. Then another. Then another. Daniel's hands began to shake. Because there were more people ahead than there had ever been behind him. And at the very center of the road stood a little girl. She was holding something in her hands. Daniel slowed. The girl raised her head. Her face was pale. Her eyes were completely black. And in her hands was a photograph. Daniel recognized it immediately. It was a picture of him. But the photograph showed Daniel standing outside his car. Not inside. Standing beside the road. Surrounded by the watchers. Daniel stared at the photograph. Then at the girl. The girl smiled. She slowly turned the photograph around. On the back were 4 words. Daniel could read them even from a distance. This is where you stay. Daniel slammed on the brakes. The car stopped. The girl was gone. Every watcher was gone. The forest was empty. Daniel sat frozen. He looked around. Nothing. No people. No voices. No footsteps. No phone messages. No strange lights. For the first time in hours? He was completely alone. Then he heard a sound from the back seat. A quiet rustling. Like paper. Daniel slowly looked into the rearview mirror. Something was sitting there. This time, it wasn't invisible. It was a man. An older man. Pale face. Dark eyes. Wearing an old-fashioned jacket. He was holding a stack of photographs. Daniel stared at him. The man looked down at the photographs. Then back at Daniel. He smiled. And slowly began counting them. 1. Daniel couldn't move. 2. The man lifted another photograph. 3. Another. 4. Daniel whispered. What are those? The old man stopped counting. He looked directly at Daniel. Then he held up the final photograph. Daniel stared. It was a photograph of the Blue Ridge Parkway. The same road. The same darkness. The same trees. But there was something in the photograph that wasn't there now. A line of people standing along the road. And in the center of them? Was Daniel. Standing among them. Wearing the same clothes he was wearing now. The same jacket. The same shirt. The same expression. Daniel's heart stopped. The old man lowered the photograph. Then he leaned forward. His face came closer to the mirror. And he whispered. You've been driving this road for a very long time, Daniel. Daniel stared at him. No. The old man smiled. You just don't remember. Daniel shook his head. No. The old man lifted another photograph. Daniel looked. It showed Daniel's car driving through the mountains. Another photograph. Daniel standing beside the road. Another. Daniel speaking to the first watcher. Another. Daniel counting them. Another. Daniel sitting in the gas station. Another. Daniel surrounded by hundreds of people. Daniel stared at the photographs. His mind began to fracture. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. The old man placed the photographs on the seat. Then he leaned closer. Do you know why they stand beside the road? Daniel couldn't answer. The old man smiled. They're waiting for someone to replace them. Daniel stared. The old man's expression changed. For the first time, he looked almost sorry. Someone has to watch. Daniel whispered. Watch what? The old man pointed toward the windshield. Daniel looked forward. The road was empty. But far in the distance, a figure stood beneath the trees. Daniel narrowed his eyes. The figure began walking toward the road. Slowly. One step at a time. Daniel's breathing became shallow. The old man whispered. That's the one you haven't met yet. Daniel looked at him. Who? The old man didn't answer. The figure in the distance stepped closer. Daniel watched. Another step. Another. Another. Then the headlights caught the figure's face. Daniel's entire body went numb. Because he knew that face. He had seen it before. Not tonight. Not yesterday. Not years ago. He had seen it. In the mirror. Daniel stared at his own face standing in the road. The thing wearing his face stopped. It looked directly at him. Then it raised one hand. And pointed toward the passenger seat. Daniel slowly turned his head. The old man was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The photographs were gone. The doors unlocked. The engine was running. Daniel looked back toward the road. His double was gone. The watchers were gone. Everything was gone. Only the forest remained. Daniel sat there for several seconds. Then his phone vibrated. He looked down. One new message. Don't trust the person who tells you to keep driving. Daniel froze. Because there was only one person in the car who had told him to keep driving. The voice beside him. Daniel slowly looked toward the passenger seat. Empty. Then the voice whispered from directly behind him. Too late. Daniel's blood turned to ice. The engine revved. The headlights flickered. And somewhere far ahead in the forest, hundreds of voices began counting again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Daniel grabbed the steering wheel. The car began moving. And as the Blue Ridge Parkway disappeared beneath his headlights, Daniel finally understood the terrible truth. The watchers weren't following him. They had never been following him. They had been guiding him. And whatever destination they were taking him toward was a place Daniel had apparently visited before. A place he had forgotten. A place where the watchers were waiting. A place where, according to the photographs, Daniel was already standing among them. And as the first mile marker appeared in the darkness, Daniel saw something written across it. Not a road number. Not a distance. Not a location. Just a single sentence carved deep into the metal. There are always more of us than you count. Daniel stared at the words. Then he heard footsteps behind him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then a child's voice whispered, "Daniel." He didn't answer. The voice came again. Closer. "Daniel." He kept his eyes on the road. Then the little girl whispered the words that would make Daniel realize that the nightmare had only just begun. Daniel stared at the endless road disappearing into the darkness of the Blue Ridge Mountains, unable to move, unable to speak. Behind him, thousands of silent figures remained frozen beneath the trees, their pale faces watching, waiting for him to make the choice they had been waiting for all along. The engine suddenly came back to life, but Daniel did not touch the key. The passenger seat beside him slowly sank beneath an invisible weight, and a cold breath brushed against his ear. "Drive," the voice whispered again. Daniel looked into the rearview mirror one final time. There were no cars behind him now, no watchers standing beside the road, no sign of the cabin. There was only darkness. But just before he looked away, Daniel noticed one final figure standing in the distance. It was himself, standing beside the road, staring directly into the mirror. Then the figure raised one hand and began counting. 1, 2, 3. Daniel immediately looked forward and pressed the accelerator. The car disappeared into the darkness of the Blue Ridge Parkway, carrying him toward a road that should not exist and a destination he could no longer remember choosing. By sunrise, the parkway looked completely normal again. Birds moved through the trees, morning fog drifted across the mountains, and passing drivers saw nothing unusual. But somewhere along one of the forgotten curves, Daniel's car was gone. No wreckage was found. No tire marks led into the forest. No abandoned vehicle was ever discovered. The only evidence that Daniel had ever been there was a small photograph found several days later beside the road. In the photograph, Daniel was standing among hundreds of silent people beneath the trees. He was smiling. And behind him stood the same dark figure that had followed him throughout the night. On the back of the photograph were 6 words written in faded black ink: "The road always needs another watcher." So if you ever find yourself driving along the Blue Ridge Parkway after dark, remember this story. If you see someone standing motionless beside the road, don't stop. If you see another person behind them, don't count. And whatever you do, don't look too long into your rearview mirror. Because according to the stories whispered through these mountains, the first person you see may not be the one watching you. And if the number of people beside the road seems to increase every time you look back, there may already be one more person inside your car than you remember. Perhaps the most terrifying part is not that the watchers are waiting somewhere in the darkness. It is that they may already know your name. They may already know how many times you've driven that road. And somewhere deep within the Blue Ridge Mountains, they may already be counting, waiting for the moment when you finally become one of them.